Yeah, another draftscience.com. Oops, draftphysics.com. And debatephysics.com. Video presentation. So, I'm going to make this video. I might post it later because I'm just curious to see what the comment section will do all on its own. you know, so Ian Gosling has done my experiment. And the one he gloated over. Okay, he titled his video "Proof of Kinetic Energy." Yay! He gloated. He did all of this antics. He's done all of this insulting. All right, and he redid the experiment correctly, and now is just looking for excuses to say it's not the right answer. So it was proof when it came out his way. It's not proof when it comes out my way. So this is to, Physics Michael is such a, they're all such hypocrites. They're all pretending that, it isn't. I don't blame them for trying to resurrect their theory, but I'm just saying, just be honest about it. Don't blame me for finding flaws in your experiments because you're going to find flaws in mine. So why are you pretending? I mean, it's just such bullshit. I mean, they're just such duplicitous hypocrites. So, yeah. So, I mean, it's just such a, I'll play his video, and it's just such a nothing video. He doesn't even show the experiment. So when it's his way, he shows the experiment. When it's my way, he doesn't even show it. I mean, it's not science all of a sudden. All of a sudden, it's not science if it comes out my way. If it proves my theory, then it's not evidence somehow. Nobody needs to see it. And people wonder, well, why are you? You have some conspiracy theory? I don't need a conspiracy theory. These people, these morons, are proving why science sucks. It's because there's no fair cops here. This isn't a fair cop. He proved it the other day, and now it's not proof. The same experiment done right isn't proof. Do the experiment wrong, it's proof. Do it right, it's not proof. I mean, and this nothing title, learning all the time. Well, what the fuck? That's not consistent with your rhetoric that you're learning anything, you arrogant, obnoxious pig of a human. It's so hypocritical. I mean, the hypocrisy, the duplicity of this nonsense. And then the joke is that Stephen Bro types all this crap about how he already knew this is the answer. I mean, he knew he couldn't get the kinetic energy result. Now he's claiming he got 3.5 or some other kind of crap. That it was almost twice as much compression, which is just a pile of shit. We know. Anyway. And he probably had clay that was 10 inches long, and it probably bent or did some other kind of crap. But anyway, so it doesn't come out their way. We don't see it. Is the whole point, right? So Brozo's admitting I did a whole bunch of experiments, never showed you any of that crap because it didn't come out my way. So and I get accused of confirmation of bias, and then he's still going on about this stupid de Chatelet-Granville experiment where I've already pointed out it's just totally it's just wrong to think it's a good experiment for testing or measuring based on this displacement argument when you drop round things into clay, because round things provide a cheat for the thing that doesn't penetrate as far. The further something penetrates, the deeper it'll go. The less it penetrates, the less deep it'll go. Because the round things mean you're pushing sideways the deeper you go, and the less deep you go, the more you're pushing down. And pushing sideways is easier than pushing down. Kind of obvious. But he's still selling this as that's the good experiment. And that's what this moron should be doing. Instead of finding some other way to measure the energy, we should only do it the ways that come out our way. So that you just keep rolling things, on surfaces and claiming it went 4 times as far, so therefore it's 4 times the energy. Just keep ignoring the arguments, ignoring the fact that it can be understood why that experiment won't work, and just ignore all that. All right, and so then he goes and talks about the center of the gravity as somehow the issue. The two objects are the same thickness. The center of mass almost doesn't matter, so as long as the thicknesses are the same, it doesn't matter. In his previous experiment, the twice mass was twice as thick. That was a problem. All right, in this experiment, it doesn't matter, so as long as you're below the line with both pieces, it's not going to be an issue, the center of mass. And especially with the height being so much higher than the thickness, it's infinitesimal. Now, Brozo actually explains that, it can't add up to anything. And he's desperately clinging that he's going to find some reason to say the experiment's no good. So it was good enough to be proof, 5 days ago. Now it's not good enough. So now there's catches. Clay doesn't work. The center of mass is off. He's just going to try to find some way to weasel out of the fact that, yes, my prediction is absolutely correct. Momentum does work, and it will reveal itself if you do the right experiments. And he just couldn't care less about that truth because he knows kinetic energy is real, and he knows this experiment should come out his way, and it shouldn't come out any other way. So it's just so bad. So let's see if anybody just points out that this is this is just really, you're just being hypocritical and duplicitous, not to make some statement that he says learning all the time. Did you learn anything about humility and that maybe you shouldn't make bold claims when you really don't have the answer, when for 350 years science really hasn't produced any evidence and they're right anyway? It's just really bad, frankly. It's just really disgusting. In light of the videos he's made, the end is nigh. He's going to prove me wrong. And all of a sudden now it's not a proof. When the answer confirms what I say, all of a sudden it's not proof. It's just a junky experiment. There's something wrong with it. It's just such hypocrisy. All right, so I'll play this shit.
Well, got an interesting one here, guys. And in the interest of scientific understanding, I thought I would make it. We've got to have some discussion about this.
So I don't even know how he could be this stupid, frankly, right? Okay, do I have the right clip? Yeah. When he made this other video and I pointed out the mistake, he drew the mistake and could even see the mistake. And so he recognized the mistake. And it's clear that the mistake could only be, if you corrected the mistake, it would be hugely advantageous to my argument. The mistake was completely distorting something completely in their favor and against me. So even though the experiment, when he cheated, still didn't verify kinetic energy, it was still way off for kinetic energy. And every bit of the flaw in his experiment fixing it would be to my advantage. He can't win. How could he possibly think fixing the experiment would produce a result consistent with kinetic energy when he was already short and he was going to be even shorter? It just shows that he's not very smart. And he thinks he can do these experiments, and he's really just not very fucking smart.
Full business of dropping a weight. One velocity and two velocities, but dropping it 4 times higher. It's not quite as simple.
So he was singing and dancing and having all kinds of fun, showing the experiment when it was done wrong, and it was to his advantage, in the sense it didn't prove kinetic energy, but it didn't come up with momentum either. It was right in between. So he got a result that proved me wrong, in the sense that, yes, it wasn't my prediction, but it wasn't his either, which is the joke, which makes the whole thing so fucking funny. How stupid can you be? You say you proved kinetic energy, and you really didn't. You proved some new theory. It's just... And again, this is what physicist Michael says is a guy who does good demonstrations. He's a fair cop. He's he's not bending the truth. Just amazing. Bending the experiments to fit the truth. the truth.
That's what I thought it would be. When I did the first experiment, I had the weights suspended, or I had the line, the first line above the weight like that.
You drew the lines before you measured the actual distance that the weight was going to be falling. So yes, you put the weights below. That means the actual distance it falls is the distance minus the amount of the thickness of your weights. And you had double weights, so it was a lot of thickness, frankly. And the objects weren't going to fall that far. Okay, so your lines were all wrong, so you had to make your lines correct. So it's pretty easy to make 4 equidistant lines, so that part's not hard. The only hard part is you have to recognize the first weight has to fall that actual distance. It has to fall the full length of the line. Oh, shit. And the top one isn't going to matter much. Whether you're above or below is such a small difference, it's not going to matter because you didn't do it 4 times. The fact is you made the mistake 4 times.
Because as you go up, you're gaining. I can't explain the maths as I'm doing this physically, but you're dropping from a higher distance then overall. So the idea was we've got to have the weight above the line.
The one mass has to be dropped from the 1 unit of distance. Yes, it has to fall 1 unit of distance. Okay, and it's not going to matter the center of mass is in ½ inch or an inch further, because the only part that's going to hit the clay is the bottom. That's where the distance stops. So it's that amount of distance. The center of mass isn't ever going to hit the clay. The center of mass doesn't hit the clay. This plate at the bottom hits the clay. That's the falling distance. The center of mass will fall exactly the same distance as the bottom. The top will fall the same distance, the bottom will fall the same distance, and the center of mass will fall the same distance. And by putting it on the center line, there's no problem. Now, if the weights are a different thickness, then at the top you have to make a tiny little 3 millimeter change. But that's it, 3 millimeters. It's not going to make any difference.
Like that. Can't see that much, too much light above the line. And on the face of it, to me, that sounded correct. I did the experiment again, and to my utter surprise, they came out the same.
So how could it be a surprise? I mean, I illustrated it for you. Okay, you drew it and saw, wow, it is a big, huge difference. I really cheated. And all the cheats were against me in my theory. So how could you think the results would be anything else than Gary's going to end up being right? I mean, it's written all over it. So that's it. That's all. That's all we get from him as any kind of apology or I'm sorry I was such a jackass about it. I shouldn't have said I proved anything because I really didn't prove shit. I really was full of myself and I made a mistake. No, none of that.
Repeated it several times, and the same compression I witnessed on the 1 mass 2 velocity and the 2 mass half velocity.
Yeah, there actually should be a little bit of a difference, as I pointed out before, because the 10 mass is heavier, just as gravitational weight. Just sitting on the clay, it produces more weight than the 5 mass just sitting on the clay. So there is a slight difference. But when you're dropping from these heights, it's 10 pounds out of 400 pounds, or it's 5 pounds out of 200 pounds. It's not going to make enough of a difference because it's not enough. The weights are getting so heavy because of the falling momentum that subtracting 5 here or 10 there wouldn't make much of a visible difference. But technically, there should be, the heavy mass should be a little tiny bit more compression than the lighter mass.
The 2 mass 1 velocity and the 1 mass 2 velocity. Bloody nuisance, keep saying that. they come out the same compression every time. I knew that's wrong. I know that's wrong. I do not disbelieve in.
Okay, so physicist Michael, you hear this? So just understand, these are the opponents. These are the people defending your physics. Okay, so just understand that whether you want these people to be your defenders or not, you have solicited them. You have said people should do these experiments on their own. All right, so you solicited this moron into doing this, and he's making these arrogant statements, and he's clearly saying, look, if the experiment doesn't come out my way, then I'm going to prove that something was wrong with it, right? Because what else is my job? I have to prove it non-credible. Even though it's, it's like 100% more credible than its previous version, we'll just ignore that fact. Even though it's a much more credible experiment, because it doesn't have a huge, giant, gaping flaw in it, no, this is shit experiment. It doesn't mean anything. I mean, there's your duplicity.
The kinetic energy theory. But I couldn't think what was going wrong. I kept weighing the weights, and they were right. This one's £5.
I mean, he's just describing to us exactly this confirmation bias thing. So I'm just saying, why are you accusing me of it? I'm not suggesting morons do these experiments. I'm suggesting somebody who actually can figure out that 4 times the distance is just 4 times the distance. You just count how high 4 times the distance is, okay? It's 1 foot versus 4 feet. Not complicated at all. Not 1 foot versus 5 feet.
It's a new weight I got. I put some weights on it because to bring it up to the £5 because some of the cement had cracked off. One thing and another. And so they were perfectly matched, £5 and £2.5. And I kept getting the same compression. I couldn't understand it. And now this is where the discussion's got to come in.
Yeah, well, we have to, talk about how clay doesn't work and how all this stuff doesn't work, and that's why this isn't proof. Even though it was proof 4 or 5 days ago, it was proof. It was dancing proof. I'm dancing on your grave. The end is nigh. You're dead. Ha ha ha. We proved you wrong. Blah 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 blah. But no, not now. Now the experiment's a piece of shit. Fuck it. Yeah, let's just move on.
I now believe that you cannot, whether you suspend a weight below the line or above.
It doesn't matter, right? I mean, I can explain to him that it's only in the gravity twice as long. It can't possibly gain anything more than 2 units of force, because it's only in the gravity twice as long. So why do you think it has more than that? It's 9.8 meters per 1 second. It was in the gravity twice as long, 2 seconds. Therefore, it collected twice as much force, but it's half the mass. So half the mass, twice the force. Bingo. Same momentum.
It's still wrong. What we've got to do is, we've got to have the division lines at the centre of mass. How we would do that, I don't know.
Okay, so just understand, as long as the objects are exactly the same thickness or very close to the same thickness, it can't matter. The center of mass will move the appropriate distance. So as long as they're both above the line, not a problem.
Would it mean having to alter the distance of the lines as we go up? Because this mass was not getting the full acceleration because of the way, when you work it out, if it's unfair to one suspending it beneath the lines, it's unfair to the other suspending it above the lines is what.
Yes, suspend them both above the line and you don't have any problem with the thickness. The thickness can't make the distance too short for the one mass. So as long as you're above the line and they're both dropped from above the line and the line is 4 times the height, the bottoms will hit with the same distance falling, and so will the middles, and so will the tops. All of them, all the parts of the weight will drop the same 4-to-1 relationship.
I'm trying to say, either way is wrong. Now that brings up a problem of how do you do it correctly?
Right, so it wouldn't matter anyway, even if he had the weight above or below the line on the top. Like I said, it's such a minor amount of distance change, it won't make any difference in the experiment. So he could fuck up by a couple of inches and it ain't going to change anything.
And that's that's the bit I thought I'd make a video on it because it's worthy of note. I wasn't aware you.
So he won't make the video conceding the argument that he just proved me right, and that it looks like momentum rules and KE fools. I'll write that as the title. Momentum rules, KE fools.
Have this problem. So there you go. Open to discussion.
Amazing. Discussion about what? The fact that you did the experiment correctly, it came out exactly as Gary predicted, and you're somehow not conceding anything. I was supposed to concede everything because you proved it, and I was supposed to sit there and just concede, oh, well, I guess you're right, I'm wrong, and you proved it. But now it's not proof, it's not nothing, it's not even a piece of evidence. Let's talk about minutia instead. Amazing duplicity, just amazing.
Thank you.
So that was just disgusting. Yeah. So yes, I'm gonna. I'm if Physics Michael won't respond, I'm going to ask him to respond to the experiment. Now, even though he wouldn't show the experiment, right? So that's the funny part. He just has to imagine that it was done because he won't show the experiment actually being done. Because that would really rub it in his own face, and he doesn't want to rub it in his own face, right? But let's see if physicist Michael has an opinion. Let's see if he can find the huge flaw in the experiment and why the kinetic energy didn't reveal itself. It's staying hidden. It's hiding from us because clay is harder to compress or something. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, shit. I mean, shit. This is just, I really am not arguing with fair people here. I mean, it's just obvious. They're just a crooked court, as crooked can be. You know, it's going to be a near impossible task to get a fair trial. All right, so I think that's all I gotta say. Yeah, that's it. So I'll post this. I'll wait a while and see what the comments do. So far, just nothing. Okay, minutia about absolute meaningless mush. Yeah. The answer is simple. If I measure the width, thickness of the masses, then measure half that from the existing marks, and then align the new marks with the top of the weights, should then ensure center of mass increase in height proportionality. So absolute nonsense. Go ahead. If you make your marks anything other than 4 equal marks, and if they're anything longer than the actual distance the one mass falls, then you're just trying to find a way to cheat the experiment again. But you won't be able to cheat it enough, okay? I mean, whatever you decide to do here, playing with an inch here or there, it's not going to save your experiment, moron. You're not going to get anywhere near proving kinetic energy. All right. It's a tricky one. If both weights are the same thickness, then dropping from the center of mass should keep the height distances correct. But if the two masses double the thickness, which it isn't anymore. So again, all of those problems are gone. So it's just absolute bullshit. He puts his response to Steve down here for some reason. Yes, both the one mass and half mass are the same thickness now. Not yet how to proceed. Not yet how to proceed. Yes, if they're the same thickness, you have no hope of making this an excuse. Okay, you're done with your excuses regarding center of mass because it's irrelevant. The center of mass isn't what's hitting the clay. The surface is hitting the clay. The center of mass has to go where the surfaces go. The center of mass is not moving relative to the surfaces. So if the surfaces fall the distance, and the top surface will, and the bottom surface will, then this is a moot point. you're changing where they're landing. The top surface lands 3 inches away from the clay. It also starts 3 inches higher. So it's still the same distance. The middle starts here. Okay, it's an inch from the bottom at the bottom. It lands an inch higher than the bottom. Yeah, it starts an inch higher than the top. So what's the difference? Doesn't make any difference. Come on. That argument isn't going to go too far. I mean, when Dispar was doing this, again, it was because he had double thick batteries. So center of mass is relevant when you have twice the thickness. But when they're the same rough thickness, you really don't have an argument anymore. Okay, well, anyway. So just nothing here saying, oh shit, you just proved Gary right. Shit, we better panic. Yeah, no panic. I mean, your other video was proof. Why isn't this one proof? Simple enough question, right? The other video was proof. This one's not proof. Oh, okay. That's how it works. Got it. Shit.